I would want to move on to a country which has separate boards been created to promote products. And US is one of those countries where they have different boards which have been created. So they have the almond board, they have the Washington Apple board, you have the US peers, and some of them are also participating in the show. Now, Adam, when you came to India, you know that these boards have been working into the Indian market. There were already grand successes in terms of Washington Apple, almond, or the California walnut. And now we see pears and blueberries and cranberries also getting access to the Indian market. Now, when you see these boards working separately, how do you, synergize between the boards and as USDA to create that whole bandwidth of new importers, I would say, because most of these product categories are commodities. Now, to deal in commodities, it's always price driven. And also depends on the, you had a huge issue 2 years back about the almond trade. And, everyone had huge losses in India because of the price fluctuations. Now, how do you control that? Obviously, as an embassy or a trade body, you cannot do that. But how do you synergize between the trade body and the importers to create a bridge which would be able to enhance their market strength and the marketing capabilities?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Amit, and thank you to the other members of the panel. As you mentioned, we do have a number of marketing boards in India, things like the apple and pear boards. In fact, USDA has about 75 different ag market development cooperator groups, and only a small fraction are really opening in the market here. Our job as the embassy is really to be kind of that first foot in the door, as you mentioned, to bring them together, to create synergies. We've been lucky over the last 3-4 years that I've been here to really bring them together through various retail promotions, partnering with Indian retailers, but then also with the companies who are bringing in the commodities, the apples, the pears, or even the processed food products, as well as food service promotions at restaurants in emerging city markets. And so we can do that as the government where we don't really have the risk of a business sale or loss, but really can take on the brunt of that initial startup cost to carry out these activities. And with that, with the banner of the American government behind them, the companies and the trade groups often are willing to come together. The other thing is we do have programs that are Washington-based that actually allow them to develop these things on their own right. Things have been very successful in other markets, bringing, for example, our wheat export group along with the walnut group or the dried fruit group to do bakery promotions, which really get into food manufacturing areas. But the challenge is getting these new groups to come into the market. When they get market access, getting them to pay attention to the opportunities that are in India. And we guide them and we provide them the information. Bharti mentioned the other issue of getting Americans or North Americans aware of the market opportunities. And so a lot of reporting, a lot of pull has to take place out of the government to bring them together and then to push them out into the market, to the big markets like Mumbai, New Delhi, Bangalore, but then into other emerging markets like Pune or Hyderabad or other cities around the country. So it is our job as trade commissioners, as trade advocates, to really bring these industry groups together and to help them work with their work with their U.S. exporters who have Indian partners, and that's the job of government.
So again, it's very easy because you have these large budgets to promote these products in India, and you have these boards separately working to promote these products in India. But what happens, Hector from Ecuador, when I look at a small country like Ecuador, which has suddenly risen from the ranks in terms of, I see a lot of processed foods over there. I was there in Quito, and I realized that Ecuador is not just about chocolates, but there is a huge array of products, processed food, snacks, plantain chips, which have great potential in the Indian market. But the challenge is always the transit, because there's a huge transit time from South America. And South America, as a market, has always looked at US and Canada for the primary markets, and then their local markets are there. But when you look at India, and you've been here again for a long period of time, what have you seen changing over a period of time? So the cacao beans are something which are already coming in. People know about it. But what are the efforts that you have done in the Indian market to create more information? Because currently, Indians do not know much about South America, except that it's a beautiful country. They do not know much about the product portfolio that South America has to offer. Obviously there is the quinoa which comes in from Peru or Bolivia and other places in South America, but there is a huge range of other products which are available. So what have you done, Hector, in this time to
Thank you, Amit. Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you to the panel. For us, Amit, I think the best partner for us is the demography. Because right now we have a medium class of 150 to 180 million people, the medium class. And in the next year, this medium class is going to grow to 250 to 300 million people. So this is our best partner for us. So this middle class, they are traveling, they are exploring, they are trying new products, okay? Now it's very normal, and you can see in the restaurants, quinoa salads, you can see Norwegian salmon, you can see chocolates from Ecuador. So now the Indian market is going more and more international. It's becoming more and more international. So I think we came here in 2013. At this time, we didn't have any product in the shelves of the supermarkets from Ecuador. And now we have many products. Not too many, but we started with some products. And I tell you one thing. In 2013, we didn't have a cocoa bean here in India. $0 we sold in cocoa beans. Now, actually, we are #1 provider of cocoa in India. So I think it's a huge market, and but also is a huge challenge for us.
So when I was there in Ecuador, I met this company who produces one of the most expensive chocolates in the world. It's called Tuac, and 50 grams of that chocolate sells for about $300 US. Now, that's one of the amazing sights, and I was so scared of touching that chocolate because when he told me to sample the chocolate, I was scared that how can someone spend $250 to $300 on a small 50-gram piece of chocolate? And he had this whole story around. It was a beautiful white wooden box engraved with the story of Ecuador. He had tweezers by which, and the art of eating chocolates. I don't know, because that art is still not here. We eat chocolate like chocolate. You just put it in your mouth and just, you don't even try to feel. And he was talking to me like a sommelier of wine. You breathe at a certain point of time, you leave it on your palate for a certain point of time, you let it melt for a certain point of time. We eat chocolate at 5 degrees because we want the cracking chocolate. We don't eat it at 15 degrees, which is the right temperature. Now, as an embassy or as a trade body, do you invest a lot of time and energies in promoting the product as well as how to use that product or how to consume that product? Because everywhere across the world, the consumption, there's always a difference in how people consume that product. So do you educate them in how to do that?
Let's talk about the chocolate example. We are promoting like the wine, okay? Because normally you said something that is true, okay? You take the chocolate and you eat it. But normally the chocolate is confused with the choco bars or something like this, okay? You are not eating a real chocolate. So right now we are planning to this 2018 to make like a taste of chocolate, black chocolate with different flavors, okay? So we want to educate the people, and especially the ladies, because normally I'm here already 5 years, okay? So normally you go to the restaurants and you find during the lunchtime many tables full of ladies, okay? So we want to attack this niche of market because we want to educate them why it's so important to consume black chocolate, because it's healthy and it's also very delicious. So we have to create new habits, new culture, because here in India is a different market like the US or Canada. We have to be innovative. Yes. We have to create new things, because India is India, just now we bring some quinoa soups, but we have to add masala to the soup. Okay, we have to create new products, new strategies, new everything.
Absolutely, you're bang on that factor that Indian, like any other country, does change the flavors of the product that comes to Indian. So like Americans have their American version of Chinese, Indians have our version of Chinese, which is Indian Chinese, and the Chinese have the real version of Chinese, which is food for them, not Chinese as such. But I want to take it to Francois from the French consulate. Now, France is representing always the premium, high-end gourmet products. But we see, except for a few successes which have been there, like the Monin syrup or the Bon Mama jam that we were discussing in the speaker's lounge, there has not been huge successes in the Indian market. And French companies, though, are expanding to a lot of different regions, but India is not something that we see a lot of French portfolio coming here. And as a consulate, it is always challenging, or an embassy for that matter, to educate consumers, because when you come on the negotiating table, the price factor comes into play, the value proposition comes into play, and then France literally moves out of the scene because they say that we have a certain product that we give a certain value, we cannot lower the price. So how do you see that as a challenge for your products or your country's products into the Indian market?
Well, first I would like to thank you very much for inviting me to this podium. I was here yesterday and I walked through the exhibition, and there is 2 languages that are used for food. There is one language that talks about food, snacks, sandwiches, popcorn, and there is one language that talks about cuisine, gourmet, chef, pâtisserie, restaurant. This is the French language. It is because we, as French, we enjoy the food. The food is really part of our culture, it's part of our life. It doesn't mean that the French products are always expensive, but they are made for pleasure. When French people come to India, they also have 2 words to describe India. The first one is beautiful, but there is a second one. It's difficult. It's difficult for the French people to understand India for many, many reasons. And one of them, it's the difference we do have in the culture of eating. When French people meet in the evening, they talk about 2 things: politics, okay, and food. We always talk about food. What do we do as embassy? We try to explain to the French people that Indians are not French, but there is. We also have, not only in India, but in many, many countries, one day in the year, day in a restaurant that is a French day. It's called Good France, and this year it's going to be the 20th of March. In France, we have a very, very, very famous traditional play that talk about a man who doesn't want to spend money, a very stingy father. And he tells his son, we are not here to, we do not live to eat, but we eat to live. And each time, people are laughing, because in France, we live to eat. And we do not bargain with pleasure. So it means, yesterday evening, I was meeting French people coming to India to sell their product, and one told me, oh, I had a horrible meeting. We sat, and the guy said, how much? He didn't even taste the product. This is so for this way, it's not going for the French person to make a deal. Even if at the end it could be a deal, because it was so hurt. Nobody tastes the product, nobody talked about the product, there was no discussion. You see, this is the difference of culture. But don't worry, it's going to happen. France is not yet the first importers of food in India, but in all EU countries, we are the second largest investor in the agri-food business. It means we are producing food now in India. We are learning how we can produce with a French flair produced in India, and it's going to work.
I absolutely agree because there are so many ardent fans of French food, but and I would resonate the story back that any one of us when travels to France has a similar kind of a feeling that it is beautiful, it's a beautiful country, but it's difficult for us because at the end of the day it becomes challenging because the language is a barrier which comes over there. English is not that widely spoken and you have similar challenges in different countries. But one country is completely taken the food scene by storm, and that has been Peru. The food scene over there has developed like crazy. The food has tremendously grown. The chefs have done what no other people are going to Peru to understand how food is created, how the whole story of the real essence of food, along with the flavors and the presentation is there. So, Luis, if you can talk about what brought about that thing and how do you see that translating into India? Because you see a lot of these restaurants doing similar things, which Peruvian, fine dine or top 50 restaurant like Central or Maido or Hasta Higuetin, they do that. So what do you see, what kind of similarities do you see? And how do you see a lot of these products which are now available in India? We were talking about quinoa that, it was earlier coming in from Peru or Bolivia. And now we have Indian quinoa which is available widely. And from a poor man's food, it went to a gourmet food, and now again it is going back to the masses. It is not a class food, it's still going to the masses. The story of quinoa is growing everywhere. So you'll find a lot of companies doing quinoa bars, quinoa pops, quinoa salads, quinoa kebabs. So now the story is changing. So what, how do you see that happening in India? And what does the embassy, pisco is one thing. Again, I want you to touch about pisco as well. So.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much, Amit, for this opportunity. If I can say something about the Indian food or the Peruvian food or about both of them, what I have to say is that we have a lot of things in common. For example, I'm sure that you at home, early in the morning, you will talk about breakfast, but in that moment you will talk about your lunch. What are we going to have for lunch? And during lunchtime, somebody at home will say, and what for dinner? And during dinner, you will say, okay, what for tomorrow? That is something that's always happening in Peru. If we talk about, our restaurants and our food, what I can say is for the last 6 years, the World Travel Award has offered us an amazing gift. Peru is the world's culinary destination, 6 years in a row. So something is happening in the other side of the world. Talking about I don't want to say that it's a challenge. It's also a challenge and a duty to all of us. And I'm sure that my colleagues will agree with me. We have to educate a lot of sectors. In my case, we're working with exporters. Okay, we need to let them know what is going on here. What they have to consider about your culture related to food. Also, we are working with your importers because they need to know what is Peru, what is Ecuador, what is the US, what they can find over there. And we have to change the point of view that we have a lot of difficulties and a lot of barriers from South America to India. They're talking about the language, no problem about business. I mean, we also speak English. And something that we have to change is the point of view of some Indian business people that always want to go in business class. Come on, we are part of the bureaucracy and sometimes we cannot do it. In collaboration with the private sector, okay, we can do it. But the thing is that when Peruvian people are here, right now I found a Peruvian company here, and he said, oh my God, this is an amazing market. People from the grape sector also came 2 years back, and now after the US, we are the second largest exporters of grapes to India. And if we talk about quinoa, oh my God, somebody from this country went to Peru and came back with quinoa seeds. But the thing is that, think about this. Think about a Peruvian trying to have a crop of basmati rice in Peru. Okay, I will obtain rice, but never will be the basmati rice that you have here in India. So also we have to educate the consumers. We need to explain them that, for example, eating quinoa is good for health, as well as avocados. So who has avocados? Who tried avocados before? Just a few of of this audience. But think about you're giving health to your body, as well as many other products that my colleagues will offer to you. The thing is that we have a challenge and also a duty, education. And something else, we need to change something in the market. We need to create a new atmosphere. What are we doing? We are working together with India to have a trade agreement. That is really important for our exporters, because without good conditions here in the market, it's really a challenge. And as Amit said, I am proud to say that the first chef in the world belongs to Peru, Mr. Virgilio Martinez. That list of the best restaurants in the world includes some Peruvian restaurants. And just to say something that I'm proud of, that man over there, Mr. Oberoi, went to Peru. And if you want to talk about Peruvian food, there's one of my best ambassadors here. Thank you.
And absolutely, I would agree that Mr. Oberoi, and I met him at a session in Delhi, and he told me that he spent about 45 days in Lima trying to see the cultural advantage of Peru and the food scene. And there was so much as a learning curve that everyone learns from the Peruvian food.